So you've watched the weird and surreal 2023 film Dream Scenario, starring Nicolas Cage, written and directed by Kristoffer Borgli, and you're wondering what it was all about. Well, prepare for your tiny little mind to be blown. For starters, despite what the end credits say, this movie wasn't really written by Kristoffer Borgli, at least not according to the man himself. You see, Borgli believes in this quote that's often attributed to Carl Jung.
People don't have ideas, but ideas have people.
Jungian stuff? Yeah, okay. I knew you'd scoff at that.
This means that in the director's own view, the film's story wasn't so much a creation of his own will, but rather an idea that chose him as its vessel. This brings us to the real main theme of the movie Dream Scenario, and it's not the fickle nature of celebrity or cancel culture. To state the obvious, dreaming is something that minds do.
Dreaming is like a psychosis, Sophie. Our brain decides to start hallucinating while we sleep. It's part of its housekeeping process.
Paul doesn't see any emotional or psychological significance of dreams. He just sees it as a biological function.
We need that to happen for some reason.
For Borgli, a movie is like a dream.
Movies are dreams. We all come in and sort of collectively share a dream together, which I think is really interesting.
What if, just as brain cells work together to create a mind, we, as individuals, contribute to a larger collective mind? A sort of global brain. A swarm intelligence. You know, like ants.
Swarm intelligence, ant colony algorithms?
Yeah.
Sounds awfully similar to my research now.
Borgli's film is a reflection on how ideas and information evolve and propagate within ourselves and within groups of people, and how any one individual only has access to a paucity of information. Dream Scenario actually has something in common with Christopher Nolan's Inception, because I believe the dreams that we see in the film are dreams within a dream. On a meta level, the whole movie can be viewed as a dream. There's a scene where Paul tries in vain to turn off the basement light. According to lucid dreamers, one method to recognise if you're in a dream is to perform what they call reality checks, and the behaviour of light switches is one such check. In many dreams, light switches don't function normally. Either they don't change the lighting when used, or their effect is delayed or unusual. But there are other scenes in the film where light switches work, so there is some ambiguity here. The only explanation why Paul can show up in other people's minds is if those minds are somehow connected, and the movie mentions a couple of examples of collective mind theories, namely the concept of the superorganism, swarm intelligence, the collective unconscious, and memetics.
All memes will become dreams?
If the whole movie is a dream, then whose dream is it? The obvious candidate would be Paul Matthews, but it could also be viewed as a dream that is occurring in the collective mind of the global brain. Borgli didn't set out to write a commentary on modern life, cancel culture, and the fickle nature of celebrity. He wanted to create a Jungian dream movie.
It didn't start as let me think of a way to speak about modern life. It started as like, I want to do something Jungian, something about dreams.
Carl Jung is famous for proposing the collective unconscious, the part of the unconscious mind that we all share. The conscious part of our mind doesn't get full access to everything going on in our brains. There's a whole unconscious world boiling under the surface below the level of our awareness. Borgli also wanted to explore how we don't fully know the people that we know. We only ever experience a person filtered through our own perception, the part that makes it to consciousness.
I know it's not my project, but I'd love to be involved somehow.
I thought you weren't on that project.
Well, I wasn't, but now Chris wants me on.
So we have limited information coming both from the subconscious mind below and the perceived external world. We live as personas in each other's heads rather than being physically present, and sometimes the true nature of another person doesn't align correctly with our impression of them. One of the earliest ideas for the film was that attempted sex scene.
Please don't hurt me. Oh. Did you just come?
It's an exaggerated, cringe-worthy depiction of what happens when our perceptions of someone don't align with reality, because our perceptions of other people are impoverished. It's a bit like data compression, low-quality rendering, or caricature. But the movie isn't only about the gap between our perceptions of famous celebrities and their true nature. That's only one angle here. It's about the gap between any persona and its true nature. Even within families, the information gap plays a role. The relationship between fathers and daughters, friendships, husbands and wives. There's a gap between the persona that Paul presents to Janet.
How'd it go?
Well, oh, you mean with Sheila?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's technical. I mean, she totally saw my argument, but we didn't fully, resolve it yet.
Really?
And the real Paul.
Please, Sheila, I need this.
And there's even an information gap between our own idea of ourselves and our true nature.
So I'm finally cool, huh?
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
You hear that, Janet? She's saying I'm a cool dad now.
I didn't say that.
Hi, I have a table for Paul.
The name Paul comes from the Latin word Paulus, which means little or small.
Paul?
And Paul is a timid academic that feels entitled to recognition for work he hasn't even started doing.
Look, there's a big difference between talking about an idea and actually doing all the work.
Well, I haven't really started the actual sitting down and writing portion of it yet.
And in Paul Matthews, we see a man that doesn't understand the culture and the ideas that are driving society, much like how an individual neuron doesn't understand the ideas that are whirling around in a brain, or a single ant has a lesser intelligence than the collective colony.
This is strange, Paul. Maybe you should take a minute and think before you do anything drastic. Maybe we should cool this thing off. This is why I was skeptical in the first place.
Oh, you knew specifically that this would happen.
This kind of thing, Paul. Strange consequences.
Take it as a warning. I really feel like you're playing with fire here.
What do you mean? What am I doing?
And Paul Matthews is a boring man that doesn't stand out from the crowd.
I barely recognized you. Wow.
Oh, yeah? The beard, maybe.
No, it's the whole. You know.
It's about blending in with the herd. You see, predators need to identify their prey. They can't just attack the whole group. So if you stick your head out, you make yourself a target.
Some people have called him an NPC, or non-playing character.
Why didn't I do anything?
He's a man that easily gives up on his own principles.
Can we please put our phones away and have a real conversation? I have to take this. And I speak now from actual lived experience. No, don't say lived experience.
Paul is a slave to the social conformity enforcers with a critical inner judge that prevents him from being his own man. When we first meet him, he's extremely passive and indecisive. He's a conformist who easily acquiesces to social pressures. The closer you are to someone, it's more likely that your idea of them matches up to the reality, but it still doesn't match fully. The people who really know Paul don't dream of him.
Why do you suppose you're not showing up in my dreams?
Well, because you get the real deal. Wouldn't it be fair if you got both?
What?
Have you been dreaming about me?
I don't know. I don't keep track of things like that.
Paul Matthews lies a lot to his wife. Even Janet doesn't see the real him.
Are you nervous?
No.
So keeping in mind that we're witnessing a collective psyche, in Jungian psychology, there is a concept called the shadow self. The shadow self is the part of your personality that your conscious ego doesn't identify with. It contains repressed weaknesses, shortcomings, instincts, and desires. It's a Jungian archetype, a myth that lives in the collective unconscious minds of all humans. It's not something we learn, it's pre-coded into our brains at birth. Archetypes are the tools of thought, an operating system that comes pre-installed. The shadow is the gap between the real you and who you imagine yourself to be. There are parts of your identity that you leave out because they make you look bad. And according to psychotherapy, all our negative traits that are rejected by our conscious egos can start showing up in your dreams. The version of Paul that is turning up in other people's dreams is his shadow personality. His negative qualities or insecurities were so strong that they started showing up in other people's dreams. Paul refuses to accept any responsibility for the actions of these other dream Pauls, or accept them as part of his own identity.
What am I doing? They're dreams. It's not real. I'm not actually doing anything to them.
When Paul rejects the idea that the students have experienced trauma, he's also rejecting the idea that trauma is the cause of his own psychological issues.
Trauma is a trend these days. It is a joke. Everything is trauma. Arguing with a friend is trauma. Getting bad grades is trauma. They need to grow up.
Paul is a fan of the neurobiologist Robert Sapolsky.
Robert Sapolsky, his career has been pretty admirable.
In the cafe, Paul is reading Sapolsky's book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Sapolsky argues that chronic stress in humans is partly caused by social factors. Chronic stress arises from prolonged worry about social standing, personal failures, relationships, or work-related issues. This stress is exacerbated by a sense of helplessness or lack of control over these factors. Paul's passivity and timidity is him trying to cope with the psychological trauma of being a node in a social network.
And that's the thing with the zebras. The camouflage is for blending in with the herd because the lion can't just hunt the whole group. It has to identify a single target.
Zebras, Sapolsky argues, don't suffer prolonged stress because they lack the brain power to worry about the future or the past. They live in the moment. But we humans crack up because we're part of a complex culture.
I'm sorry. I've experienced what so many of you must have experienced. being violently attacked. I have to stress that man is not me. My mere presence upsets people, and not because I've actually done anything. Am I not the biggest victim in this whole phenomenon?
This is a dramatic depiction of the ego rejecting the shadow. In Jungian psychology, dark urges exist within all of us, but they largely remain unconscious and we refuse to accept and integrate them into our personality. But Paul's actions in the real world do influence how he's perceived in dreams. He isn't entirely innocent. He's got this idea for his book, but he's never done anything about it. He's guilty of inaction, not taking control over his life. He's not assertive or dominant in his own life. And the shadow Paul shows up as a helpless man who doesn't react or take action even in emergency situations.
Does anyone have a more original one? Maybe one where I'm actually doing something?
But when Paul starts getting recognised, it boosts his confidence. It makes Janet feel insecure and makes him more desirable to her.
Are you jealous?
I don't know. I mean, rationally, I'm not, but do you think other people are seeing you naked? I'm gonna make sure you stay right here.
This boost in confidence manifests itself in Molly's dream, where he's become a dominant, assertive, confident lover. It's a version of Paul that he'd love to be for real, but he's afraid, so he represses it. Whether it's because of repressed aspects of our personality or low bandwidth perceptual simplification, imagined persons don't often match reality. With the awkward sex scene, Paul experiences shame and humiliation when he can't live up to the imaginary version of himself. But the big catalyst for the dreams turning violent is Sheila's article. The rage Paul feels because she stole his research ideas starts manifesting in the dreams people are having about Paul. Paul's shadow enters into one of his own dreams, showing that Paul doesn't really know himself. Remember, Paul's shadow only appears in dreams of people that don't know him. So when he's showing up as a shadow in his own dream, it's showing that he doesn't even know himself. He wants to be that killer, not literally, but subconsciously, he wants to be that man of action, killing the weak, timid Paul. If we take a closer look at the article, we get a better understanding of what Paul's unfinished research was about. It's about ant intelligence, or as Paul calls it, antelligence. That's not the intelligence of one individual ant, it's instead the intelligence of the entire ant colony. The article states that antelligence is comparable to a human child, that ants even have a telepathic-like understanding of each other, which enables them to successfully survive as a colony, and that it's groundbreaking research on the collective psyche of the colony. If the entire movie was Paul's dream, this could explain why he's hallucinated a scenario where the minds of all humans are linked together in a sort of supermind, like the ants that he studied. The dream is validating his research ideas, and the collective psyche is his topic. Paul has fantasized a scenario where he was right.
Jung was right. There is a collective subconscious. Paul Matthews proved that.
It's simultaneously a fantasy and a nightmare. But why does Paul stop showing up in other people's dreams?
So what happened? They just stopped?
Yeah, I don't know. People stop having him.
Jung emphasized the importance of becoming aware and integrating the shadow into consciousness. Recognizing and accepting the shadow self is seen as important for personal growth, self-awareness, and individuation. I think there are some hints that Paul is beginning to accept and integrate his shadow side. The light switch scene symbolizes Paul beginning to integrate his subconscious shadow. And when he stormed into the room to see Sophie on stage, he was finally being assertive and taking action, finally doing something that he'd failed to do all these years. And I think that's what stopped him showing up in other people's dreams. He'd integrated that part of his shadow into his consciousness and decided he wasn't going to be bullied around anymore. He then also reassessed what was important in his life. He no longer craved the academic recognition, he just wanted his life back, he just wanted his family back. In this scene he fantasizes or daydreams about a reconciliation with Janet. But Paul still doesn't take action, he's still too timid. And if you remember that policeman who said there was a couple of ways Paul could protect himself, he could move out to a new house, Janet rejected it, or he could get a dog. And these are the things that Paul's actually somehow managed to achieve. He did move out and he did get a dog. It's all fear. Fear of rejection, fear of other people. Paul's still living in fear. When your chances for intimacy and connection come along in real life, you need to be brave and you need to take them.
What would you want to see in your dream?
Remember when you wore that talking head suit for Halloween? There was just something about it, something kind of weird and sexy. You should wear that and save me from like some situation.
For me, the main message, if there is one, is the heartbreaking fact that full openness and intimacy is a dream scenario that can never be fully realised. because it wasn't Janet's dream that Paul entered at the end, it was his own dream. At the beginning of the film, when Sophie is dreaming, the dream ends when she floats away. It's the dreamer that floats away. And with Janet and Paul at the end, it's Paul that floats away. So Paul is the dreamer, and there's no dream visitation going on. The whole thing's in his mind.
I wish this was real.
The final scene is so moving because it's so intimate, but it's not real. The idea of a collective psyche is tragic because it contains an apparent contradiction. At a deep level, we're all joined together, but at the surface level, we experience disconnect and feel distant and different from each other due to the personal narratives, cultural identities, and life experiences. We share a common psychological ground, but our awareness of this is limited because the doors of perception are only ajar, they're not wide open. When Janet first tells Paul of her fantasy, he scoffs at her. And this is why people build walls and are afraid to open up. Fear of being judged negatively. And that's what results in alienation. You might have guessed that I like this movie a lot. It wasn't perfect for me. I wasn't too keen on the Norio dream influencers subplot, but I do think it was added because the dream scenario was turning into a nightmare scenario. It further lends credence to the idea that the whole movie is a dream, either Paul's dream or the dream of a collective psyche. In a society, humans act like neurons in a collective brain. The urge to conform is strong. The culture shifts attention and energy like a brain shifting attention and energy, without concern for the individual. This is the life force that can ignite an individual or shatter him. This explanation is just my interpretation of the film. The beautiful thing about cinema is that we each see different films. Dream Scenario didn't start as a way to speak about modern life and the terrible side effects of modern life. It started as something Jungian, something about dreams. And now people are seeing their own version of a message in the movie. The audience projects their own meaning onto the movie, like a Rorschach test. Dream Scenario does touch on meme culture and cancel culture, and I think it's because some of the gags, they're like low-hanging fruit. I hope that you've now realised that when I said at the start of this video that your tiny mind would be blown, I only meant to suggest that your mind is tiny when compared to the collective hive mind. And don't worry, I'm sure it's quite normal sized. And after all, it's not how big it is, it's what you do with it. Might I suggest that you take this chance to subscribe to the channel. I'm new to YouTube and I'm trying to reach that magical 1,000 subscribers level. So if you like this video and you would like to see more similar videos, then go ahead and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you again next time.